Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to the live commentary stream for the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix. I bid everybody appropriate time of day greetings for wherever it is in your particular locale. Thank you very much for joining us here today. The Austrian Grand Prix, it is one of the classic races on this year's calendar. We are here at the Red Bull Ring, also known as the A1 Ring, also known as the Österreich Ring. Basically, whatever you call this ring, it is an absolutely fantastic place for a motor race, and speaking thereof, we have a starting grid for today's affairs. The major storyline of this starting grid is that four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel will not be starting where he qualified. Sebastian Vettel was able to put the Ferrari on the second row of the grid yesterday, P3. However, he was judged to have impeded the qualifying lap of Carlos Sainz, who was immediately behind the German, and he has been docked 3 grid positions. Sebastian Vettel will line up 6th today. The actual starting grid, as they will leave when the lights go out, looks a little something like this. Pole position for car 77, the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas. P2, Lewis Hamilton, Bottas' teammate. Kimi Räikkönen inherits 3rd place off the line, the first spot in the second row. He's followed on the second row by Max Verstappen in P4. P5, Romain Grosjean for the Haas team. That is a big-time change of fortune for the Frenchman. He's still looking for his first points of the season. P6, Sebastian Vettel. Again, his 3-place grid penalty being enforced. P7, Daniel Ricciardo in the second of the Red Bulls. He's a long way behind his teammate Verstappen in 4th. P8, Kevin Magnussen in the second Haas. So both Haas cars well and truly in the top 10. P9, Carlos Sainz. There is the man who is said to have been impeded by Sebastian Vettel. However, I don't know. You can be the judge of that. P10, Nico Hülkenberg. He's the last of our Q3 finishers from yesterday. P11, Esteban Ocon in the first of the Force Indias. P12, Pierre Gasly. So we have an all-French P11 and P12 row there. Pierre Gasly, of course, driving for Toro Rosso. P13, Lance Stroll in the first of the Williams cars. P14, Stoffel Van Dorn in the first of the McLarens. P15, Sergio Perez in the second Force India. He's followed in P16 by Sergei Sirotkin. P17, Charles Leclerc in the first of the Saubers. Leclerc, he is definitely looking for a good day today. It's going to be difficult from P17, but he might just make his way back into the top 10 to repeat his feat of scoring points in a lot of races this year. P18, his teammate Marcus Ericsson in the second Sauber. P19, Brendan Hartley in the second Toro Rosso. And P20, Fernando Alonso. Alonso has had a rather turbulent weekend. Free practice, they were trying to put the car together. They had problems getting the floor on the car, and then Alonso would go out. The car would go wide. He would knock a front wing off. Just all kinds of things would happen. Fernando Alonso starting in P20, and live timing right now is calling him in pit. So it's unclear whether or not Alonso will be starting on the grid or if he will start from the pit lane. All of that remains to be seen. Once again, good day to everybody, wherever you are. Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining us here today. Hope you're well, and I hope you're looking forward to what should be an interesting Grand Prix. Of course, we do have Mercedes dominance across the front row, but we do have, perhaps you could say, a somewhat revitalized Kimi Räikkönen in P3. Ferrari allowed him to pass Sebastian Vettel last week in France, so perhaps we could see something interesting from the Finn today. Those Mercedes cars, though, they appear to be absolutely hooked up around here. Watching the onboard of the pole lap of Valtteri Bottas, it almost appears that the car doesn't go over bumps. Everything is 100% rock steady from start to finish. I don't think I've ever seen another racing car that was not a Mercedes that looked like that. Yes, I can confirm Alonso is starting from the pit lane, and yes, they did change his MGU-K at very least, so yes, Fernando Alonso, the fun continues over there at McLaren. Jack Barlow, good morning. You're saying Formula NA 1999 is close to 400 kilometers an hour. Does anyone else think that's a bit ludicrous? You know, I initially thought that perhaps it was, but it's actually not. That is very realistic. Those late 90s kart machines, they were capable of doing 250 miles an hour. So, yeah, that's quite realistic. Anyway, stand by for the national anthem of Austria as the pre-race festivities continue. About 13 minutes remaining before the start of the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix. Pre-race festivities still well and truly underway here. The Sky Sports World feed following Brendan Hartley around here. I have to say, nice arrangement of the Austrian national anthem. Those amateur musicologists in the audience will be keen to know that the melody is by Wolfgang Mozart. The manuscript is cataloged in the Köchel catalog as K623A. It is part of the Freimauer cantata that Mozart wrote near the end of his life, and it was intended to be the final chorus to that cantata. SimRacer Flight Sim 1000, have you tried version 1.0 of the VRC F2007 yet? I have not. Of course, I do have a lot of seat time in earlier versions of that car. The reason why I haven't tried it yet, though, is because I had a video rendering and then later on uploading literally all night long. So I just didn't have the system resources to run two things at once. But I do know about it, and I will be trying it out shortly. Red Bull qualifying incident. The drivers will be briefed and they'll have come up with a plan, sometimes even on their own, regarding where the other one is going to be on the hot lap. And apparently Ricciardo and Verstappen had arranged so that they would be able to give each other a tow at different points during qualifying so that they could get, obviously, a little bit of a slipstream advantage and maybe get a faster lap time, get higher up on a grid. It just didn't work out that way. Whether or not there was a little bit of an issue trying to get those cars shuffled through the pits in Q3 in particular, I'm not entirely sure what actually happened. It just looked to me that somebody did not follow the plan, and the other was confused as all hell by that. So whatever it was either a legitimate miscommunication or or they're like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do my own thing. Figure out your own toe situation. So somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. That had all the hallmarks of in the business world when something is supposed to happen at a certain time or on a certain day and it doesn't, and then everybody else is ready to do it, but the one person that has the key role isn't ready or isn't there or whatever. That's what that looked like to me. That was an organizational problem. I don't think that was any sort of malevolence on the part of either driver. Matthias, you were there in Austria? That would be really cool. As is per usual before the start of any Grand Prix, the starting grid 10 minutes before the start of the race is still a beehive of activity. Camera's picking up Carlos Sainz here, who is trying to figure out how to get out of his car as he's got halo all around him. A little bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, perhaps. Carlos Sainz appears to be the only driver on the grid who is anywhere near their car, interestingly enough. Sky Sport catching up with Eric Pouillet of the McLaren team. He's not really saying anything of consequence. He has no explanation as to why McLaren are still so slow. Well, if we do actually have an audience member on the ground in Austria, that would be really cool. Matthias, if you can hear me, you are now our official reporter on the ground. Will Vettel get to the podium today? Well, it's certainly very possible. He's starting in 6th. That's not the worst place in the world to be, and that also means that he's going to be among the first cars to capitalize on anything that happens at the front of the field. We do know that Mercedes have a history of getting into each other here. Remember Hamilton and Rosberg a couple of years ago up into turn 3. They had big contact. Well, Mercedes, they have a precedent of crashing into each other at this place, as do they in Spain as well. We'll see. Sebastian Vettel certainly could be in contention for a podium today, I have no doubt about that. But then again, so will be Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Räikkönen, Max Verstappen, and perhaps even Romain Grosjean, depending on just how hooked up that Haas really is. So Vettel could have his work cut out for him today. I would expect him to be able to overhaul the Haas without too much of a problem, but Verstappen, he likes to fight. We'll see how far Sebastian Vettel can go. If it really does come down to it, Kimi is going to yield, so yeah, it's possible. Jack Barlow, do all Ferrari fans class as tifosi, or just the Italian ones? Well, I would say that any absolutely fanatical Ferrari fan could be a tifoso, but yeah, we typically associate it with the Italian fans, but yeah, I think it goes with anybody. SimRacer Flight Sim 1000, basically asking me, what kind of CPU do you have? I've got an Intel i7. It's, it's a KB Lake architecture, something like that. Whatever that is. But, yeah, that's what I've got. It does have hyper-threading. It has 4 actual cores, and then it can basically emulate 4 additional cores, so it can operate as an 8-core chip if it really wants to. It's somewhat inefficient, but in terms of what I do with it, it's adequate. Cosi McRae, no, the race has not started yet. We have about 10 minutes. No, we have about 5 minutes now remaining. Again, the major storyline, for those of you who are just joining us, is that Sebastian Vettel is serving a grid penalty here for impeding Carlos Sainz in qualifying. The German qualified in P3. He will start in 6th. Camodraco asking, do you think that Haas can pull anything aerodynamic out of their sleeves for the rest of the season? I was impressed with their pace from the outset with the new engines in Australia despite the DNFs. Yes, Haas definitely are in a good position, and I think they have been in a good position, as you've alluded to, for the balance of the season so far. The only reason Haas had those DNFs in Australia was because of a pit stop mistake on both cars. Otherwise, they would have been well in the points. Haas obviously does have a lot of technical support from Ferrari. Obviously, Ferrari is their engine supplier, but I have a very strong suspicion that they're getting a lot of help on the chassis and aero side as well from Maranello. Be that as it may, they are doing very well, and I think Haas's race results this year don't quite speak to just how well developed that car already is. Grosjean's still looking to score points this year. Magnussen has been the point scorer so far for Haas, but that car could easily be in... They could be fighting for anywhere from P8 to P4 on any given Grand Prix weekend if everything goes well. That is a very good car, and this team, despite only being 2 years old, they are definitely a very well-run outfit. They know exactly what they're doing. Jack Barlow, if you want to drive an F1 car on Assetto Corsa, which one would you recommend? Well, it really just comes down to what your personal tastes are. Do you like things that are very smooth but very fast? Do you like things that are a little bit more, shall we say, spectacular? A little bit more inconsistent, but definitely a whole lot more challenging to drive? Well, depends on what you want. Technically speaking, the first Formula 1 car, the oldest Formula 1 car that you could drive on Assetto Corsa is the Maserati 250F. And that thing is nowhere near what we'd consider to be race car performance today, but that's a Formula 1 car. And of course you can go all the way up to the 2017 Ferrari SF70H, so I would sample all of them and see which one you like. Anyway, we have about 90 seconds to go before the start of the formation lap. The engines are being started. The mechanics are just waiting to remove the tire blankets here from the Ferrari of Kimi Räikkönen. Ferrari definitely do look very focused here today. Looking into the eyes of Lewis Hamilton, sitting on the front row of the grid here. He's getting his gloves on, getting set to go. Here's our pole position man, Valtteri Bottas, just closing the helmet visor. The visor goes down. The driver leaves himself alone with his thoughts here as the final 40 seconds or so count down to the start of the formation lap. Non-essential personnel are off of the grid. It is just the jackmen and the 4 wheel carriers remaining on each car. The tire blankets come off, the cars go on the ground, and the drivers are left alone. Watching the master clock at the front of the grid. Just waiting for it to tick to 10 past the hour. It has done, and the field rolls off on the formation lap. Mercedes radio to Lewis Hamilton. They're still reading the track temperature as 47 degrees. That is degrees centigrade, of course. No real changes in terms of what Lewis needs to do for his start procedures. All of the other teams and all the other drivers will also have that information, and they will be adjusting their clutch map settings, their throttle map settings, and then, of course, they will be trying to get as much temperature as they need to get, particularly into those rear tires on this formation lap. Of course, the only driver who doesn't have to worry about this formation lap is Fernando Alonso, as he will be starting from the pit lane. He's currently still in his garage. He will roll out to the end of the pit lane, where there is actually a start box just behind the pit lane exit, which will have a red light on it right now. The lights will go out, and then as far as Fernando Alonso is concerned, he still has to wait another 10 to 15 seconds before he gets his own green light, and then he can join the Grand Prix. The pace of this formation lap has been pretty aggressive. Valtteri Bottas already coming back onto the start-finish straight. And the FOM graphics here just reminding us that Daniel Ricciardo is 29 years old today. Bottas and Hamilton and Raikkonen coming on to the start-finish straight. Valtteri Bottas, after doing a series of burnouts pre-described by the team, stops in his P1 grid slot. He is followed immediately by his teammate Lewis Hamilton. The Ferrari and the Red Bull on row 2 have come to a stop. Verstappen and Grosjean have come to a stop, as have Sebastian Vettel. We are set for the start of this Austrian Grand Prix, just waiting for the final 2 rows of the grid to come into position. The medical car getting into its position at the end of the field. Christian Horner of the Red Bull team looking on anxiously, as these team personnel always do at the start of a Grand Prix. Here come the lights for the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix. The lights are out, and away we go. Both Mercedes get a basically identical launch off the grid. Lewis Hamilton perhaps with a slightly better getaway, but Kimi Raikkonen splits the Mercedes into turn 1. It is 3 wide into turn 1. Kimi Raikkonen made it 3 wide. One of the Mercedes shuffled into the back. Kimi Raikkonen up into P2. It is Lewis Hamilton leading, followed by Kimi Raikkonen, followed by Max Verstappen. Then Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Raikkonen trying to go up around the outside of Lewis Hamilton into turn 3. He goes way too wide. That's not going to work, Kimi. He comes back out onto the track. He retains P2 for the moment. Lots of dust and dirt being thrown up in the background. We need to figure out if everybody made it through turn 3 okay. Valtteri Bottas fighting back on Kimi Raikkonen into turn 4. He makes it. It is Hamilton, Bottas, Raikkonen, Verstappen, your top 4 as we come into turn 5. Kimi Raikkonen, that was a start like I have not seen him start in quite a long time. Unfortunately, it looks like he's about to lose that P3 to Max Verstappen, and indeed he has. Verstappen forces Raikkonen nearly off into the gravel there through turn 7. Max Verstappen, yes, he has consolidated P3. Kimi Raikkonen, not entirely sure that every piece on that Ferrari should be on that Ferrari. There is something a little bit amiss on that front wing. We'll have to take a closer look. At the end of lap 1, our order is Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Grosjean, Magnussen, Vettel, who's down 2 positions himself, Hülkenberg, Ocon, and Stroll in 11th place. We had a position change there. Sebastian Vettel just overtook Kevin Magnussen. Sebastian Vettel now P7. That was a start from Kimi Raikkonen. Unfortunately, he could not pull it off. He very nearly did. He went wide there in turn 3. That sealed the deal. He lost all of his momentum. Lewis Hamilton, to his credit, he did cover off the racing line, which he is entitled to do. We have a yellow flag in Sector 2. We have a car off there coming into Turn 6. It looks like a Sauber. We need to see who it is. Is it Charles Leclerc? Yes, that was Charles Leclerc that went off the track there at Turn 9. He has resumed. Meanwhile, fastest lap of the race so far, 109.252. Turn 3, yes, we do have some debris down. I see some yellow pieces. That could well be a piece of Renault. On board with Sebastian Vettel as we're coming down to Turn 4. Race control saying DRS is enabled. Sebastian Vettel trying to overtake Kevin Magnussen again? Or is that Romain Grosjean? That would have to be Romain Grosjean. Indeed, it is. Sebastian Vettel currently running in P6. Back to where he started. Vettel got shuffled back by 2 positions. He has overtaken the 2 Haas cars of Grosjean and Magnussen, who currently run 7th and 8th. We still have not seen exactly what happened to Charles Leclerc there. I know he went off. He went off at Turn 5, but I don't know what happened. He's running in P19, and he's still out. He's still running. Anyway, working lap 4 of 71 here in Austria. Time for the gaps. Lewis Hamilton leads Valtteri Bottas by 1.4 seconds. Bottas ahead of Max Verstappen by a further 1.6. So the Mercedes are now starting to be in a class of their own. Lewis Hamilton holds fastest lap of the race so far, a 109.633. His teammate Valtteri Bottas did a 109.740 last time by. Max Verstappen is about 0.2 a lap slower than Lewis Hamilton at this point. Verstappen last time by 109.816. However, he is fastest of all in Sector 2. Believe it or not, fastest Sector 1 time right now belongs to Carlos Sainz. Watching a replay of the start there, Kimi Räikkönen definitely was feeling inspired for the first 3 corners of this Grand Prix. He had a slight lockup coming into Turn 3, and that's really what forced him wide. There was no contact with Lewis Hamilton at any point. Hamilton, to his credit, was just defending the racing line, which he was already on, but on board with Kimi Räikkönen as he's threading the needle between both of the Mercedes. That was brave stuff from the veteran Finn. Still watching replays of the start here on the world feed. Max Verstappen also got a great start. Picks up a great slipstream from Kimi Räikkönen, who himself was slipstreaming from Lewis Hamilton up into Turn 3. Wow, Verstappen could have very nearly found himself in the lead through Turn 3. Räikkönen goes off on the left, and then Hamilton himself had a bit of a lockup. If Räikkönen had not committed up to the outside, Räikkönen might have been able to make quite a challenge for the lead there. More replays of the start. Stoffel Vandoorne, there we go. That was the contact. Stoffel Vandoorne missing part of his front wing. He has since pitted to replace that. He is the first car a lap down, but he is still running. Working lap 6 of 71. Lewis Hamilton continues to lead his teammate by 1.736 seconds. It's a further 2.1 seconds back to Max Verstappen. Hamilton, fastest lap of the race, a 109.051. Fastest of all in Sector 3. Valtteri Bottas last time by a 109.906. Hamilton is almost a full second a lap faster than his teammate. Max Verstappen now beginning to reel in Valtteri Bottas. Verstappen could well be in second place in a short while. Stoffel Van Dorn getting waved blue flags. He is the first car lap down at this point. Now we're about to see something interesting. For those of us who have been following Valtteri Bottas in particular this year, we know that when it really comes down to it, he lacks the all-out pace to improve his position as well as to defend his position. I'll talk about Bahrain again, where Bottas definitely had the advantage over Sebastian Vettel. The Ferrari's tires were ridiculously worn out. They were never supposed to be on a one-stop strategy. However, Vettel was able to win in Bahrain, even though his tires really shouldn't have still been in existence at that point. Bottas had by far the better tires and by far the better car at that point in the race, yet he was still unable to convert that huge advantage into a victory. Is Valtteri Bottas going to be able to defend against Max Verstappen today? We shall see. Raikkonen on the radio talking about the debris into turn 3. It is not on the racing line. Unless somebody really gets it out of shape there, nobody's going to hit that. I don't think we need to cover that under virtual safety car or safety car conditions. Lewis Hamilton resetting fastest lap of the race, a 108.972. The only car running in the 108s at this time. His teammate last time by a 109.140. Already working lap 9 of 71. Obviously, this is a very quick lap around this place. This race should go down somewhat quickly. Nathan Tanti, yes, I definitely agree with you. It was about time that Kimi went for it. He saw the gap and he went for it. That is the Kimi Raikkonen of 2003, 2005. I have not seen him do that in quite a while. That was cool to see, even though it didn't work out. Interesting choice by the FOM graphics there. They superimposed a half star over the circuit and the cars were running under it. Why? I don't get that at all. The gap to P2, Lewis Hamilton leads by 2.216 at this time to Valtteri Bottas. The gap between Bottas and Verstappen is a further 2.474. Incident between Raikkonen and Verstappen has been noted according to race control. There we go. Verstappen did make contact with Kimi Raikkonen there. That's running through turn 7 on lap 1. On board with Verstappen now in replay. Should be Verstappen's right front to Raikkonen's left rear, and indeed it was. It was the lightest of touches, but it was enough to get Kimi in a big oversteer moment, and of course Verstappen took that position. Race control is taking a look at that. Working lap 11 of 71, the order at the front of the field is unchanged. Hamilton leads from Bottas by 2.109. Verstappen in P3. However, perhaps not for too long. Kimi Raikkonen in P4. We are waiting for a race control decision on how exactly Verstappen made it past Raikkonen. Ricardo in P5. Vettel in P6. Alonso radio. Fernando Alonso, Radio Gold once again. He's saying, you got to do something with the strategy or whatever. I will not do 71 laps here, meaning P19, and for all intents and purposes, the last car on the lead lap. Alonso, of course, 2 weeks ago, won at Le Mans. He is also won at Spa in the World Endurance Championship. He has also led at Indianapolis in the Indy 500. And, of course, he is a two-time Formula One world champion. Fernando Alonso, just on his own merit over the balance of his career, deserves to be running someplace a bit better than P19 in the Austrian Grand Prix. We have a Renault with an engine failure down the start-finish straight. That is Nico Hülkenberg. The Renault is belching tremendous clouds of smoke up into turn 1 rather, and it is now on fire. Hülkenberg seems to have lost his brakes. He's going to hit the barrier at the top of the track, it seems like. Lots and lots of smoke down the start-finish. We have waved yellow flags. Hülkenberg has managed to bring that Renault to a stop safely. He has not hit anything. On board with Carlos Sainz in the other Renault now. Those cars are built identically. I'm sure Sainz will be aware of his teammate's misfortune and be wondering when it's going to happen to him. Waved yellows in Sector 1 and 3. Nico Hülkenberg has made it out of his car. He is okay. There was a fire at the back of the car. It was a turbocharger fire, it appeared to be. It's now extinguished. That was an engine failure along the lines of things that we used to see about 10, 12 years ago. On board with Hülkenberg. Coming down the back straight here. What can we hear? Big vibrations, plainly evident there for Hülkenberg. The engine starts to sound very sour indeed. And then, as David Hobbs used to say, kablamo. Yellow flags have been stubbed down. Lap 13 of 71. We are back to a green track all the way around. Order at the front still unchanged. Hamilton leads from Bottas, from Verstappen, from Raikkonen, who, by the way, set the fastest lap of the race just before the yellow flags came out. That was a 109.874. However, Hamilton and Bottas, and actually Verstappen, have usurped it at this point. Fastest lap right now, 109.501. Red Bull warning Ricciardo, possible oil turn 10. No, you think? Valtteri Bottas is running slowly, and he is pulled off the track coming down the run into turn 4. We have lots of heat shimmer coming out of the back of that Mercedes. What has happened to Valtteri Bottas? There's no apparent damage on the car. He is still running. However, he is running down one of the slip roads here. Bottas very clearly out of the Grand Prix. Yellow flag in Sector 2. Radio. Loss of hydraulic pressure, says the radio transmission to Valtteri Bottas from Mercedes. Bottas does stop the car, and he is out of the Grand Prix. That moves Max Verstappen up into second place and Raikkonen up into third. This is very unusual to see a Mercedes drop out of a Grand Prix with a reliability issue. Virtual safety car now deployed due to the positioning of where Bottas is. He is well off the circuit, but that run down to turn 4 is very fast. I can understand why they'd want to slow the cars down. On board with Bottas. big loss of hydraulic pressure. You could definitely hear the clutch slip happen for Bottas. It sounded like the engine control electronics were also messed up by that, because on the onboard shot, and we needed a tachometer there, we needed that tachometer overlay to see exactly what happened, but it sounded like the V6 ICE in the back of that Mercedes revved to about 18,000 RPM and blew itself to pieces. So, yes, definitely day done for Valtteri Bottas. Red Bull in the pit lane. This is for Max Verstappen. Verstappen into the pits. He's the first of our front runners to stop. Off with the old tires, on with the new tires, on to the softs, specifically for Max Verstappen, and Daniel Ricciardo gets stacked up immediately behind him. We had a Ferrari in the pit lane as well. I believe that was Kimi Räikkönen. Indeed it was. Sebastian Vettel also in the pit lane. Lewis Hamilton, the only car not to stop so far under this virtual safety car period. That does not appear to be the way to go. Max Verstappen and Kimi Räikkönen now very much in the pound seat. Lewis Hamilton, he is running on the super soft tires. However, his tires are 18 laps old. Everybody behind him now, down to Kevin Magnussen in P5, running on fresh rubber. Virtual safety car period is ending, according to race control. On board with Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes, I think they just got that a little bit wrong, because they're going to be coming into their stop window anyway. Why would you not pit Lewis under the virtual safety car? Everybody behind him now has fresh rubber. Green flag is out. We are racing again. Lap 17 of 71, Lewis Hamilton still leading the race by 13 seconds over Max Verstappen. Where will Mercedes pit Hamilton? That is the question. I would have pitted him under the virtual safety car. It's effectively a free pit stop. They did not do that. It is now Hamilton's race to lose, believe it or not. Red Bull telling Verstappen Hamilton did not pit, and we are within his pit stop window. The delta time here in this pit lane is going to be about 20 seconds. Verstappen currently 13.2 seconds on the road behind Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen's going to inherit the lead of this race unless Hamilton is able to put in some qualifying laps right now. And speak of the devil, and he shall come. Lewis Hamilton resets fastest lap of the race, a 108.607. That definitely does not come anywhere near the 103.1 set by Valtteri Bottas for pole position yesterday. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo hits fastest lap, a 108.228. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo in hot pursuit of Kimi Räikkönen. This is for P3. Both of these men stopped under the virtual safety car. They're both on the super soft tires. Rather the soft compound tires, the yellow branded Pirellis. On board now with Sebastian Vettel running in P5. A good deal behind that battle between Räikkönen and Ricciardo. Vettel radio. Ferrari telling Vettel that he's doing a good job. You're faster than Hamilton in Sector 1. Problem is, Vettel is a good 23 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton at this point. Daniel Ricciardo goes purple in Sector 1, 17.011 in his pursuit of Kimi Räikkönen's third place. Romain Grosjean talking about blue flags. I believe that would be in reference to Stoffel van Dorn. Haas not entirely sure what's going on there. The circuit's losing timing, apparently. So the virtual blue flags have been lost. Kimi Räikkönen locking up into turn 3. Danny Ricciardo right there behind him. Räikkönen is able to resume the track. However, Ricciardo with DRS and a big slipstream is going to be taking Räikkönen into turn 4. Undoubtedly, the Australian appears to make easy work of the Finn, and indeed he does. Räikkönen definitely now having some balance issues with that Ferrari. He is on the fresh tires, but not quite good enough. Daniel Ricciardo up into P3 now. Red Bulls run second and third. This could be a very good day indeed for Red Bull, particularly given the fact that Lewis Hamilton is now out of sequence with everybody else in terms of the pit stops. Norman Robinson, hello! Well, Norman, you definitely missed a very cool start. Kimi Räikkönen very nearly made his way into the lead into turn 1. However, a lockup into turn 3 meant that he was relegated back down into 4th place, where he is right now. Meanwhile, Danny Ricciardo, fastest lap of the race, 108.201. World Feed TV picks up Lewis Hamilton again, who is now starting his 21st lap on this set of super soft tires. He was the only front runner not to pit under the virtual safety car period that we had. He has not been able to extend his gap over Max Verstappen either. It remains 13.1, 13.2 seconds. Just to confirm for Norman, Lewis Hamilton is the race leader at this point by 13.1 seconds over Max Verstappen. Word from race control, the turn 3 incident involving Räikkönen and Verstappen, no further action. Our current order, working lap 22 of 71. Lewis Hamilton leads by 13.2 seconds over Max Verstappen. Daniel Ricciardo in P3, Räikkönen P4. Vettel, P5. He's one spot above where he started in P6. In P6 is Kevin Magnussen in the first of the Haas cars. P7 for Perez, 8th for Grosjean, 9th for Ocon, and 10th for Carlos Sainz. Out of the race at this time are Valtteri Bottas and Nico Hülkenberg, both of whom suffered mechanical failures. Nico Hülkenberg had a very spectacular old-school style engine failure, and we're not entirely sure what happened to Valtteri Bottas. All we heard on the radio was loss of hydraulic pressure. Cameras picking up Lewis Hamilton once again as he begins lap 23 of 71. The gap there at the front, 13.5 seconds. Lewis Hamilton needs to bring his gap up to 20 seconds before he makes a pit stop. I don't know if that's possible. That's asking a lot for him to gain 7 seconds in the next handful of laps. Again, we had a virtual safety car period. All of the front runners pitted except for Lewis Hamilton. Everybody from P2 to P5 running on the soft compound tires. Lewis Hamilton running on the super softs, but they are 25 laps old, counting the reconnaissance laps from this morning. Hesitated I. If Lewis is waiting for another VSC, that is quite a terrible decision to make. Virtual safety cars don't happen all that much, and given that everybody is pretty well strung out now, it's not very likely that we're going to see another incident. Red Bull radio to Ricciardo saying Hamilton's going long and he's going to try to attack at the end. Red Bull obviously needing to react to that. Now, this is an interesting strategy call, to say the least, by Mercedes. They're obviously out of sequence with everybody else. It's going to mean, perhaps, that their tires will be fresher at the end of the race. Not entirely sure if this is what they plan to do from the beginning, or if this is somehow in reaction to the virtual safety car. Obviously, the Mercedes is able to work with its tires somewhat nicely, and they are currently 27 laps old on that Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, the only Mercedes remaining in the race. Everybody else made that pit stop. However, Hamilton doesn't appear to be losing that much time. The gap to Verstappen is still hovering around 13 seconds. It's not enough for Hamilton to make the leap in the pit stop. He will not retain his lead once he does make his pit stop, but he will be in striking distance. He should resume, if he were to pit now, he should resume in about P4. Word from race control about turn 1 incident between Ocon and Sainz. Sainz is going to be given an official reprimand. They're going to write him a very sternly worded letter. On board with Lewis Hamilton, who takes to the pit lane, working lap 25 of 71. Lewis Hamilton, the only one of the front runners yet to pit. He is in the pits now. The gap was 12.8 seconds to Verstappen. Verstappen will undoubtedly inherit the race lead at this point. Off with the super softs, on with the softs. Hamilton and Mercedes making a good stop. Max Verstappen goes by into P1. Daniel Ricciardo goes by into P2. Kimi Räikkönen should also go by into P3. Now, where is the pace of Lewis Hamilton relative to everybody else? Kimi Räikkönen unable to leapfrog Hamilton there. Now, I beg your pardon, Räikkönen in P3, Vettel in P5. That is the Ferrari behind Lewis Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel, though, he did react to Hamilton's pit stop. He just reset fastest lap of 107.989. Still not enough to overtake the Mercedes for P5. My prediction there of Hamilton rejoining in 4th did come out to be exactly correct. Hamilton now running in 4th. Max Verstappen is currently your race leader by 4.1 seconds over his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Kimi Räikkönen up into P3, 5.5 seconds behind Verstappen. Lap 27 of 71. It is now going to be very interesting to watch Lewis Hamilton's pace relative to the guys in front of him. His tires are about 10 laps newer now than those of the guys in front. If Hamilton can keep in touch, he doesn't even need to attack at this point. If he could just keep in touch with those around him, he's going to be in the pound seat when the next round of pit stops happens. Single racer, according to the live timing app from Formula One, there is no change in the top 3 positions of the Drivers' Championship. Hamilton would still lead from Vettel, from Ricciardo there. Raikkonen and Verstappen would go up 1 point each, though, to go into P4 and 5, respectively. Bottas would drop 2 positions for P6. Obviously, no points for Valtteri Bottas forthcoming today. Charles Leclerc and Lance Stroll going for it, coming down into turn 5. Lance Stroll had the inside line, Leclerc on the outside. Lance Stroll, that Williams is incredibly twitchy there. Every other car, including the Sauber, is incredibly stable through there. Not the Williams. Charles Leclerc, though, fighting his heart out for P14. Doesn't look like we're going to see points for the young Monegasque here today, but we are still seeing a spectacular show of driving prowess. Leclerc is going to have DRS down start-finish. Indeed, he does. The slot gap opens up. Lance Stroll should be a sitting duck in that Williams. However, I don't think Leclerc is close enough to try anything into Turn 1. Indeed, he is not. The run down between Turn 1 and Turn 3. Leclerc on DRS once again on Lance Stroll. He should have about 15 to 20 kilometers an hour more straight line speed than the Williams in front. However, not quite close enough. He tries an optimistic move up the inside, and somehow he makes that work. Charles Leclerc now classified P14 ahead of Lance Stroll. That move shouldn't have worked, but it just did. There you go. Your talent of the future, ladies and gentlemen, Charles Leclerc. That was an overtake that started way far back in the exit of Turn 1, and somehow he made it work without any contact and without leaving the circuit. Brilliant driving. Lewis Hamilton on a charge. He is set fastest time in Sector 1 with a 16.813. He is 0.8 of a second behind Kimi Räikkönen at this point. Expecting Hamilton to overtake Räikkönen any time now. Lewis Hamilton on the radio to Mercedes. This was somewhat cryptic. He's saying, there's something that I want to say, but just leave me to it. Apparently, that decision to pit or not to pit underneath the VSC was not Hamilton's call. Mercedes didn't want to pit under the VSC, and, well, now I understand Lewis Hamilton. He is currently running in 4th. He was leading. Had he pitted under the VSC, we wouldn't have lost the lead at all. So I could understand Hamilton's frustration there, but Hamilton's going to be in a better position toward the end of the race. He's going to be able to go longer on this stint, and if they don't want to pit him again, he's going to be in the pound seat. Everybody else in front of him should have to stop at least one more time. I think Hamilton's going to have to stop one more time as well, but he's got 10 more laps in the bag than the guys in front, so if it comes down to basically a war of trying to keep the tires alive, Hamilton has a 10-lap advantage. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton 0.991 behind Kimi Räikkönen at this time. Hamilton should be in DRS range down the start-finish straight. More Hamilton radio. Hamilton to Mercedes saying, I feel like I'm running out of power. What's going on with Mercedes today? We've already had Valtteri Bottas drop out of this race. Are we seeing problems for Lewis Hamilton now? Let's wait and see. Watching Hamilton sector times here. Sector 1, purple, is 16.668. Sector 2, 30.760. Hamilton sector times are competitive to the rest of the field around him. So if he is having a problem, he's driving around it with no difficulty whatsoever. We ride on board the nose of Lewis Hamilton in pursuit of Kimi Räikkönen. Hamilton has DRS on Räikkönen, but Räikkönen has DRS on Ricciardo. So basically no straight line speed advantage for the Mercedes relative to the Ferrari. However, Hamilton is right on the gearbox of Kimi Räikkönen now. The gap is just about 0.6 of a second. Have a lapped car, that is Sergei Sirotkin, allowing Ricciardo, Hamilton, Räikkönen through. In replay here, this is Carlos Sainz and Kevin Magnussen up into turn 3. Magnussen makes easy work of the Renault. Martin Brundle here, just as mystified as me. Why is that Mercedes not just disposing of that Ferrari of Kimi Räikkönen? Given the pace difference in qualifying that we saw yesterday, that Mercedes is miles ahead of the Ferrari in terms of pace around here, but it's just not happening in race trim. Kimi on the radio saying the Red Bull has big blisters on the left rear. Ferrari are just telling him, well, go get him. We'll see if Räikkönen is able to go get him. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton trying to go get him in the form of Mr. Räikkönen. The Mercedes appears to be marginally closer this time by. World feed picking up Daniel Ricciardo here running in P2. We are watching that left rear tire, just trying to get a clear shot of it. Oh yeah, they've got to pit him. They've got to pit him right now. That left rear is going to blow up not too long from now. We can see that the tread block is completely penetrated there with that blister. Wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing the canvas showing through there before too long. Ricciardo has got to make a pit stop. That tire is not long for this earth. Meanwhile, Perez and Sainz fighting for 9th and 10th. Perez up the inside into turn 3. Makes easy work of that Renault. Perhaps they have turned that engine down in the sole remaining Renault after what happened to Nico Hülkenberg. Kimi Räikkönen with DRS assistance on Daniel Ricciardo. See if he's able to make any inroads on the Australian down the run to turn 3. A little bit too far back for that to happen here on lap 36 of 71. Verstappen, meanwhile, he has got a lead of about 6 seconds over his teammate in P2. 5.883 is the live gap at this time. It's a further second back from Ricciardo to Räikkönen. Lewis Hamilton has dropped back from Kimi Räikkönen. The gap is now just about 1.1 seconds. In replay, pit stop issue for Carlos Sainz. They just could not get that front right tire on during that pit stop. However, they did manage to get it affixed to the car, and the Renault is sent back out into the Grand Prix. Kimi Räikkönen with DRS on down to Ricciardo down into turn 4. He is very close to the Australian. However, Ricciardo, he defends the racing line and he retains his second place for the moment. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is extending his gap over his teammate. 6.4 seconds is the current interval between Verstappen in P1 and Ricciardo in P2. Kimi Räikkönen having to regroup a little bit after trying to attack down to Ricciardo. He should retain DRS advantage down start-finish as well as in the run down to turn 3. Will Räikkönen be able to dispose of the Red Bull and challenge for that second spot on the podium? We shall see. Räikkönen is very close to down to Ricciardo out of turn 1. That DRS advantage definitely is going to show itself right now. The gap between the Red Bull and the Ferrari is closing all the time. Will Ricciardo defend the racing line? Indeed he does. Räikkönen up the outside into turn 3. That's never going to work. Ricciardo maintains his position. However, Räikkönen gets a better drive out of turn 3, again with DRS, and now with a very good slipstream. Kimi Räikkönen jinks off to the left, around down to Ricciardo into turn 4. Now Räikkönen covers off the racing line and makes the overtake happen on the Red Bull. Kimi Räikkönen now up into P2, 6.9 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Ricciardo radio, he's saying that it's getting really bad right now. That, of course, is talking about the left rear tire with that very big blister on it. Daniel Ricciardo now, quite predictably, comes into the pit lane. Which tires will go on the Red Bull? Ricciardo pits and out, just waiting to confirm the tire compound that he is on. It looks to be the Super Soft. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel going up against Lewis Hamilton. Look at that! Squeezing Hamilton right off to the edge of the circuit into turn 3. Sebastian Vettel now running in P3. Lewis Hamilton losing that position. How is this happening here? Lewis Hamilton in big trouble. We need to see a replay of about 10 seconds prior to that. What happened to Lewis Hamilton? Sebastian Vettel now up into P3. Lewis Hamilton appears to be going backwards. What has happened? Hamilton is on the newer tires. His tires are 10 laps newer than those on the Ferrari. Hamilton has no pace all of a sudden. Lewis Hamilton on the radio to Mercedes saying, guys, I don't understand what's happening. I'm not going to be able to pass them. My retort to that is, Lewis, you're on the same tires as the guys around you, and they are 10 laps newer than anybody else. Sebastian Vettel just overtook you in a slower car on older tires, and you're telling me that you can't fight him back? What is wrong with you, quite honestly? You don't get on the team radio and say that when you know that you have better tools available. You get on with the fight. Yes, perhaps you should have pitted behind the virtual safety car, but you didn't. Now you're in this bit of trouble. You've got newer tires than the guys in front. Get after it. You still got 30 laps to go. You could still win this race. With Hamilton running where he is now in P4, Drivers' Championship order still doesn't change, but Sebastian Vettel will gain more points on the Englishman should they finish in this order. Hamilton would be plus 12 points, Vettel would be up 15. Hesitated I don't really understand how Lewis's tires could be gone. They are 10 laps newer than the tires of everybody else around him, and they are the same compound. So if Hamilton's having tire issues, that means he's overdriven them, plain and simple, because the Mercedes made the super softs last longer than this. Some messages from Ferrari to Kimi Räikkönen about potential blistering. Red Bull telling Daniel Ricciardo, hey, other people are starting to get blisters as well. Could be in a position to capitalize. Sebastian Vettel there being balked a bit by Fernando Alonso. Not much Alonso could do about it, just the way the track goes. Working lap 43 of 71, watching Ocon and Magnussen fighting for P7 as they come down through the final two corners of the lap. I have to say, both the Force India and the Haas look very good around this place. This is a very aero-dependent circuit. It's high on mechanical grip as well, and it's also high on engine power. Both of these cars definitely look very well sorted around here. Watching the gap there between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has come within 1 second of Sebastian Vettel. However, it doesn't look like he'll be able to attack. Looking at the lap times, Lewis Hamilton last time by a 108.469. Sebastian Vettel last time by a 108.276. The only car in the top four running slower than Lewis Hamilton is actually the race leader, Max Verstappen. 108.558 last time by for Max Verstappen. It would appear that Lewis Hamilton is losing most of his time in Sector 2. Sector 2 is really the only place, aside from the final two corners of the lap, where we have proper high-speed corners here. The rest of the circuit is very stop-start, and here we go. We're getting our first clear look at the rear tires of Lewis Hamilton, and there are some blisters already starting to settle in here. How is that possible? Lewis Hamilton's tires, as I've said before, are 10 laps newer than those of Sebastian Vettel in front of him, yet they already appear to be shot. That is quite interesting. I do have to wonder, was Hamilton just too aggressive on the throttle, getting too much wheel spin, or does the Mercedes have some sort of tire durability issue around this circuit? We have seen other cars have tire issues, and there is quite a huge vibration on that Mercedes as we ride on board the front wing. Just watching on board this Mercedes, there is a huge vibration that settles in at high speed there. I wonder if he's got a tire balance issue, maybe on the rear, maybe specifically the left rear there. It's a strange vibration that appears to be working its way sort of diagonally across the car from left to right. Norman Robinson, that is a good question. Did Hamilton get the wrong set of tires? He is on the soft compound, the yellow sidewalled soft compound, so he is on the right compound for this stage of the race, but did they perhaps put a scrub set on when they meant to put on a sticker set? Who knows, but Hamilton definitely does have tire problems. Yes, Jonathan Straitman, good point. This would be a cool place for Verstappen to take a win. I imagine a lot of Dutch fans do make their way over to Austria. It's not that long of a drive, all things considered, although, of course, the Belgian Grand Prix would be more convenient for them. What Formula One really needs is a Dutch Grand Prix, and they would be well served to do that at a place like Zolder or Zandvoort. I don't think either one of those circuits has the FIA Grade 1 certification, but either one of those places would be a great place for a Dutch Grand Prix. I know Zolder is in Belgium, but hey, same difference. Working lap 48 of 71, and now intrigue starts to build here. All of the front runners, aside from Lewis Hamilton, have 32 laps now on their soft compound tires. Hamilton with 22 laps on his tires, but he has problems nonetheless. Hamilton's tires appear to be in worse condition, despite being 10 laps newer than those in front of him. Race control waved blue flags for Pierre Gasly in P10. Yes, single racer. I am definitely a fan of geography. Looking at Hamilton's rear tires, they are starting to wear quite heavily, but it appears to be rather symmetrical. Radio. Hamilton on the radio saying the rear tires are starting to delaminate. I don't quite see that happening. However, there are two very dark stripes down the center of both of his rear tires there. You can really see where the camber is on those rear tires. You can definitely tell the difference between the contact patch and the outside shoulder of the tire now. Similar lines, those camber wear lines starting to appear on his front tires as well. That appears to be about the same for everybody else currently running the soft tires. Boxer engine sounds. You want gaps? I will give you gaps. Max Verstappen leading the race by 7.053 over Kimi Räikkönen in P2. Sebastian Vettel in P3, he's 1.3 seconds behind Räikkönen. Hamilton, P4, 1.1 seconds, now 1.5 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. Danny Ricciardo, P5, he is 19.2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Working lap 50 of 71. Hamilton laps Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso. Hamilton 1.5 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. No DRS now for Lewis Hamilton. Not on this lap. Watching his rear tires out of turn 3. Situation not really changed. On board with your race leader, Max Verstappen, watching his right front. Definitely you can see the wear lines. Verstappen radio. Verstappen on the radio saying, I'm feeling good, don't worry. And he even throws in a little chuckle there. Verstappen just having a leisurely Sunday drive, it appears. He still has a gap of 6.1 seconds over Kimi Räikkönen. Would they attempt to get him to the end on these tires? It certainly appears that they could try. We're now getting inside of 20 laps to go. We know the Mercedes could make the super softs last for 20 some odd laps. Surely the Red Bull can make the softs last for 20 laps or so. Verstappen's right front tire does look grooved, but I think that is a trick of the light more than anything. Just the way the sun is falling on the tire, it appears that there's a deep cut all around the circumference of the tire, but I think that is just normal camber there. That's camber wear. The gap at the front remains stable. Verstappen leads Raikkonen by 6.1 seconds. Another 1.9 back to Sebastian Vettel in P3. Nobody setting fastest laps at this stage. Verstappen sets a personal best of 108.037 last time by. Nobody running in the 107s yet, really. Sebastian Vettel, last time by a 107.952. He is the fastest of your front runners, but again, he's not really making any inroads on Kimi Räikkönen for P2. We're going to see if we're going to get any more pit stops. At this stage of the game, it's definitely a game of speculation. We have 19 laps to go. Everybody running on the soft compound down to Daniel Ricciardo in P5, who is running on the super softs. We could see another pit stop, but it depends on who blinks first, if anybody blinks. If nobody looks to be making their way into the pits, and as I speak, Mercedes are getting a set of tires ready for Lewis Hamilton. Pitting at this stage for Lewis Hamilton would be an absolute disaster in terms of track position. Hamilton radio. In the interests of journalistic accuracy, some blue language about to come from your beloved F-man here. Lewis Hamilton saying, I don't want to say to you guys, but these rear tires are not going to fucking last. Now, Hamilton takes to the pit lane. They have a set of red-striped super soft tires ready for the Mercedes. Hamilton into the pit lane. He's got the limiter punched up into that first pit box. Hamilton stops on the marks, off with the old tires, on with the new tires. Hamilton released back into pit lane. Good stop by the Mercedes boys. Hamilton now on the super soft tires with 17 laps to go. Hamilton definitely will have the tire advantage, but he does become the first car to blink. Will anybody else now decide to make a pit stop in reaction to what Mercedes have just done? We shall see. Also, we're going to have to watch the relative pace of Lewis Hamilton. Daniel Ricciardo has made it past the Englishman for P4. Hamilton rejoins in P5. Lewis Hamilton with DRS already on Daniel Ricciardo. He is very close to the Red Bull. The gap, we're still waiting for the gaps to recycle through timing and scoring. However, just visually here, I can tell you that Lewis Hamilton is about 0.8 of a second behind Daniel Ricciardo at this point. He's most likely going to remain in that DRS activation zone down start-finish and thereby all the way down to turn 3. Hamilton will just be getting the last bit of heat into these tires now as he completes his outlap. Daniel Ricciardo, he got on the radio saying he's losing gear sync. In other words, he's losing synchronization in that gearbox, and he has now slowed significantly. Daniel Ricciardo right there at the end of the pit lane. We need some live TV pictures. Daniel Ricciardo has pulled the car off into the grass there on the outside of turn 1. Daniel Ricciardo has stopped out next to the barrier there, out of turn 1. This would appear to be terminal. Daniel Ricciardo out of the Grand Prix. He got on the radio saying he lost gear sync. I believe that means that he has lost rev matching there on the downshifts, and that probably chewed the gearbox up before too long. Daniel Ricciardo out of the Austrian Grand Prix. Double waved yellows in Sector 1. Let's see what's happening here in replay with Daniel Ricciardo. Looking for signs of rear locking. Oh yes, lots of smoke out the back of Daniel Ricciardo's car. It was a momentary puff of smoke. does not appear to be an engine failure in any regard. It appears to be that could very well have been clutch smoke. If he was having issues with the rev matching coming down through the gearbox, that would definitely put a lot of load through the clutch as the rear axle attempts to spin the engine and gearbox back up if the rev matching was not good. I suspect Daniel Ricciardo with a clutch failure. Green flags now being displayed all around the circuit once again. Working lap 56 of 71. One of the Red Bulls out of the home Grand Prix here. And as we speak, Brendan Hartley goes off. That is through turn 10. Brendan Hartley going very slowly. He's rejoined the circuit. He is very much off the pace. He's pulling offline. He's re-accelerating a bit. Brendan Hartley definitely with some sort of problem here. Radio. Brendan Hartley now pulling off the circuit out of turn 1. He's going very slowly in that run through what the FIA call turn 2 and up to turn 3. He does not appear to be pulling off the circuit. He is moving very slowly, though. White flags will be being displayed here with 15 laps to go. Hartley just coasting in neutral. And now he decides to pull off the circuit there in the slip road just before the braking zone for turn 3. 2 Red Bull sponsored cars here out of the race in as many laps. What happened? Coming through the final corner there, Brendan Hartley just appeared to lose drive. Not quite sure what that was. But we just had one Red Bull with a transmission problem of some sort, and there's a second one. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen continues to lead this race by 5 seconds. Lewis Hamilton on those super soft tires resets fastest lap of the race, a 107.460. We have waved yellow flags in sectors 1 and 2. Not so sure the stewards are going to be so keen on that, Lewis. Meanwhile, watching the rear tires for Max Verstappen, they are not looking to be in great condition, but they're not looking to be awful either. Just watching his left rear there, a little bit of blistering. Nothing too severe. We have to assume at this point that everybody in the top 4 is going to be going to the end of the race on their current set of tires. Hamilton on the super softs, which are only 5 laps old. Everybody in front of him, Verstappen, Raikkonen, and Vettel on the soft compound there. 42 laps old are all of the tires in front of Lewis Hamilton. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc up into P10, so it looks like for another week in a row, Charles Leclerc could be scoring some points today. Some palace intrigue here in terms of Ferrari. Raikkonen leads Sebastian Vettel at this point by 2.5 seconds. Raikkonen running in P2, Vettel in P3. Will we see team orders in Austria from Ferrari for the World Championship considerations? Raikkonen ahead of Vettel right now. If Vettel could get a jump on Raikkonen, he's going obviously to be scoring more points than Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton in 4th right now due to Ricciardo dropping out. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, he is sending the message to Ferrari. New fastest lap and a new all-out race lap record, 107.301 for Sebastian Vettel. Fastest lap and a new race lap record around here. Lewis Hamilton responds to Sebastian Vettel's pace, 107.241, another all-out race lap record. Working lap 60 of 71, 11 laps to go. Max Verstappen leads over Kimi Räikkönen by 4.203 at the line. Verstappen is falling off the pace a little bit. He's only got to nurse these tires for another 10 laps. The gap now, Verstappen to Räikkönen, 4.088 as they run right now. Again, we have got 10 laps to go this time by. Kimi Räikkönen is in a good position here. Sebastian Vettel is also in a good position here, and if we see team orders at Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel could be in a really good position, all things considered. The tires on Verstappen's Red Bull, as well as those on Räikkönen's and Vettel's Ferraris, are exactly the same age, and they are the same compound. The soft tires on all three of your front-running cars. Sergio Perez overtaking Esteban Ocon, a little intramural struggle there. The rear tires on Ocon's Force India are absolutely rooted. Ocon definitely let Perez go there. He knows it's not worth fighting. Working lap 61 of 71. 10 laps to go. The gap between Verstappen and Räikkönen has shrunken to 3.648 last time by the stripe. Räikkönen and Vettel are on the way to the front of the field. Things are getting tense here. Räikkönen radio. Ferrari on the radio to Räikkönen saying, "We have no concern anymore. You are free to push," meaning that they have gotten through whatever window that they were trying to get through, most likely regarding the tire wear. Now with 9 laps to go, if Räikkönen gets on it, and really gets on it, if he can string together some fast laps, we've seen Sebastian Vettel string together a fastest lap of the race previously. Räikkönen, assuming that everything is healthy on his car, could well get after Max Verstappen here in the closing few laps of this Grand Prix. Both of the Ferraris negotiating laps traffic there. That looks to be a Sauber. Can't confirm, we're a little bit too far away on this camera shot. I beg your pardon, that was Romain Grosjean in the Haas, splitting the two Ferraris there a lap down. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc fighting for it down into turn 4 in replay. Alonso has overtaken the Sauber for the last point. Lewis Hamilton going slowly coming up into turn 3. What's going on with the Mercedes? Hamilton pulling off. Hamilton pulling off there out of turn 3. He rejoins the circuit. Hamilton saying that he lost power. He's rejoined the circuit. He's in the run down to turn 4. He's going even slower now. This appears to be terminal for the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. When was the last time we saw a double retirement from Mercedes? Is it Spain 2016 when they took each other out? It could well be. Lewis Hamilton comes to a stop in the run down to turn 4, and he switches the car off. Lewis Hamilton out of the Austrian Grand Prix. A double retirement for Mercedes. This has not happened in the turbo hybrid era as far as I believe, not due to mechanical problems. Yellow flags displayed in Sector 1. Hamilton's car, it is parked on a slip road, but we do have marshals on track now. They need to get that Mercedes out of the way very quickly, otherwise we could well have a safety car here. If there are any statisticians in the audience, I want you to figure out, when was the last time we had 2 Mercedes drop out due to mechanical failures? I cannot recall it, in all honesty. The last time I could recall a double retirement for Mercedes was Spain 2016, when Hamilton and Rosberg crashed into each other. Marshals have now pushed that Mercedes behind the barrier. Green flags displayed once again. No need for a safety car. The gap between Verstappen and Raikkonen for P1 and 2 is down to 3.7 seconds. Working lap 65 of 71. Vettel would retake the lead in the Drivers' Championship by 1 point if they finish where they run now. Raikkonen, purple in Sector 3, 20.257. Compare that to Verstappen in Sector 3, 20.585. Raikkonen on a charge, 3.4 seconds is the gap. Meanwhile, in all the chaos, Fernando Alonso has made up another position. He is now currently running in P8 after starting from the pit lane. Great drive by Fernando Alonso, as we are quite keen on seeing these days. Charles Leclerc back up into P10. He's followed immediately by his teammate Marcus Ericsson in P11. If Leclerc could overtake Pierre Gasly, we could see 2 Saubers in the points. Gasly, Leclerc, and Ericsson running nose to tail coming down into turn 4. Leclerc goes for it on Gasly. He makes the overtake stick. Now Marcus Ericsson could get past Pierre Gasly. And indeed he does. 2 Saubers in the points. Leclerc 9th, Ericsson 10th. Brilliant. Meanwhile, Kimi Raikkonen, new lap record of 106.975. That is ridiculously fast by the Finn. The gap down is now down to 2.8 seconds between Raikkonen and Verstappen for P2 and P1. 2.8 seconds is it. Raikkonen, fastest lap of the race, and a new all-out record of 106.975. Raikkonen is flying. Working lap 67 of 71. Raikkonen is running out of time to do it if he is going to do it, but he does have the pace to do it. Look at that. 106.975. Verstappen last time by 107.558. Max Verstappen coming up to lap Stoffel Van Dorn here. Blue flags will be displayed for the McLaren any time now. Expecting Van Dorn to let Verstappen go into turn 4, if at all possible. Verstappen still a little bit of a way back. That has indeed not happened yet. Now Van Dorn lets the Red Bull through. Raikkonen makes his way around Stoffel Van Dorn. Vettel makes his way around Stoffel Van Dorn. Dutiful move by the McLaren driver there. Lewis Hamilton walking back into the pit lane. He's certainly not going to be a happy bunny. Gonzalo Rodriguez. The order is Verstappen, Raikkonen, Vettel, Grosjean, Magnussen, Perez, Ocon, Alonso, Ericsson, and Leclerc, your top 10. Personal best last time by for Max Verstappen, 107.469. Raikkonen last time by, 107.286. The gap is 2.5 seconds. Working lap 69 of 71. Raikkonen running out of time here if he's going to challenge Verstappen. At this point, I don't think it's going to happen, barring disaster for Max Verstappen. Two laps to go, working lap 70 of 71. Max Verstappen is your race leader by 2.4 seconds in front of Kimi Raikkonen, who is on a charge in the Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel running in P3. Can Verstappen keep it on the island for another couple of laps? The gap remains stable up front, 2.4 seconds between Verstappen and Raikkonen. 1.5 laps to go. The Dutch fans camped out in Sector 2 are loving this. For the penultimate time through the final corners for Max Verstappen, he begins lap 71 of 71. Keeping an eye on those rear tires for Max Verstappen as he makes it out of turn 1. Raikkonen in hot pursuit, just over 2 seconds behind the Red Bull. Everything is going right on this last lap so far for Max Verstappen. Through turn 3, gets his braking right on point, makes a good apex and makes a good exit there. No wheel spin whatsoever on that Red Bull through the exit of turn 3. Raikkonen is in the picture. 1.9 seconds is now the gap. Through turn 4 for Max Verstappen, just very gracefully turning the wheel once in and out of the corner there. Accelerating now down toward turn 5. The gap 2.1 seconds. Raikkonen out of time to challenge Max Verstappen, who is coming through turn 7 and 8 now. Up the hill very sharply for Max Verstappen, approaching the final complex. Turn 9 and turn 10 are all that remain for the Dutchman. Through the final corner, Max Verstappen over the exit curbs. The checkered flag is up. Max Verstappen wins the Austrian Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen comes home in second. Sebastian Vettel in third. Sebastian Vettel retakes the lead in the Drivers' Championship by 1 point over Lewis Hamilton. Kimi Raikkonen on the last lap sets another race lap record, a 106.957. What a race that was. Max Verstappen, winner of the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix. And those Dutch fans, a sea of orange in Sector 2, they are loving this. SimRacing604, thank you for joining us today. This was a good one. Once again, the Austrian Grand Prix has not disappointed us. Great race, lots of intrigue, lots of reliability problems here. We saw proper engine failure for Nico Hülkenberg down the start-finish straight. Daniel Ricciardo out with some sort of transmission gremlin. Both of the Mercedes cars out with some sort of electronics gremlin, it would appear. And Max Verstappen is here to take a win on home soil for the Red Bull team. Haas absolutely ecstatic with their results today. Romain Grosjean in P4, Kevin Magnussen in P5. I told you at the start of the race today that that is where the Haas cars should be looking to run for every Grand Prix, and that is indeed where they have finished. Haas have arrived. Our final order as these guys cross the line. Max Verstappen in P1, taking an absolutely sensational win here in Austria. P2, Kimi Räikkönen setting the fastest lap on the last lap. That is the Kimi Räikkönen of old, a 106.957. P3, Sebastian Vettel, meaning that he overtakes Lewis Hamilton for the lead of the Drivers' Championship by 1 point. P4 for Romain Grosjean, and he's consequently the first car a lap down. P3, Sebastian Vettel, the last car on the lead lap, if you could believe that. P5 for Kevin Magnussen in the second Haas. P6, Esteban Ocon. He's followed in P7 by his teammate Sergio Perez. Good points for Haas and Force India today. P8, Fernando Alonso in the recalcitrant McLaren. P9, Charles Leclerc in the Sauber. P10, and the final point scored by Marcus Ericsson in the second Sauber. 11th, Pierre Gasly for Toro Rosso. P12, Carlos Sainz for Renault. P13, Lance Stroll for Williams. P14, Sergei Sirotkin also for Williams, and P15, and technically speaking, the last car classified, Stoffel Van Dorn in the second McLaren. Out of this race, Lewis Hamilton, Brendan Hartley, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, and Nico Hülkenberg. Mark Webber conducting the post-race interviews on the start-finish straight. Max Verstappen, what have you got to say, lad? Max Verstappen obviously very happy with the result here today. Mark Webber catching up with Kimi Räikkönen. What does Kimi have to say? That was the best drive I have seen in about 8 years from Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi saying we took it easy for a little bit too long. He knows that he had the pace to win this race, and I agree with him. And all of that talk about Kimi Räikkönen perhaps being a little bit long in the tooth and not long for Ferrari, I think those doubts were dispelled here today. That was the drive worthy of the World Championship, and of course Kimi has one of those. Webber now speaking with Sebastian Vettel. These two have a little bit of a history. Looking at the World Championship standings at this point, as Sebastian Vettel basically gives his pre-prepared statement to the media. Sebastian Vettel retakes the lead in the Drivers' Championship, 146 points over Lewis Hamilton in second place with 145. Kimi Räikkönen moves up 2 spots in the driver standings to P3 with 101 points on the board. Ricciardo not scoring any points today. He drops down to P4 with 96 on the board. Max Verstappen moves up into P5 with 93 points. Bottas drops down 2 spots for 92 points in P6. Magnussen moves up big time in the Drivers' Championship, plus 10 points today, up into P7. Alonso stays where he remains in P8, 36 points on the board. Hülkenberg in 9th, Sainz in 10th. Perez, Ocon, Gasly, Leclerc, Grosjean, Van Dorn, Stroll, Ericsson, Hartley, and Sirotkin there at the back of the driver's standings. Now that Roman Grosjean has had a good result today, Sirotkin is now the only driver in 2018 yet to score points. In the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari retakes the lead in the Constructors' Championship, 247 points. Mercedes in second place with 237. 10 points is the balance of the lead for Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull in P3 with 189 points on the board. Renault in P4 with 62. No more points today for Renault. P5, Haas up 2 spots in the Constructors' Championship with 22 points today, 49 in total. P6, McLaren down 1 spot from as they were this morning, 44 points on the board for McLaren. P7, Force India with 42 points. P8, Toro Rosso, no points today, 19 on the board in total. Sauber in P9 in the Constructors with 16 points on the board. They gained 3 more today. And down in 10th and last in the Constructors' Championship, Williams with 4 points scored. There will definitely be a lot of intrigue in the fallout after this race to figure out what happened with regard to both Mercedes cars. We know that they've been trying to get a new engine specification out into these cars. It would appear that they've been able to do so for this weekend if they hadn't already done it by France. However, it has some major problems. We don't need to overstate that. Both Mercedes cars out of this race. I remember one of the storylines coming into this weekend was everybody was rather frightened of the updates that Mercedes had brought. However, it was an air castle. Both Mercedes out of this race. Standing by for the drivers to make their way out onto the podium. And Sebastian Vettel makes his way out there. Kimi Räikkönen following him, and we await Max Verstappen on the podium. Max Verstappen making his way out onto the podium, being received wonderfully by this crowd. Again, a lot of Dutch fans most likely here. Stand by for the national anthems of the Netherlands and Austria. The anthems ring out over the podium in Austria as the fans have absolutely invaded the circuit, and it doesn't matter where we go in the world, wherever Formula One is, somebody in the Ferrari fan base manages to smuggle in one of those aeronautical flares and spread red smoke across the start-finish line. Jonathan Straitman, yes, a keen observation, a normal trophy. We don't have any plastic gorillas on the podium this weekend. That, of course, an allusion to the trophies presented last weekend for the French Grand Prix. Still don't quite understand what that was about. Kimi Räikkönen, in typical Kimi fashion, going straight for the champagne bottle. He wants to drink as much of that as possible. Yes, I would agree. That trophy looks like it is made of wood. Interesting. World feed picking up Jos Verstappen there in the pit lane. Of course, Jos, the father of Max. Jos had a pretty interesting Formula One career of his own. Never managed to win, though. Well, this was certainly a very interesting day. Both of the Mercedes out. Obviously, that would be the major storyline coming out of this race. What is the problem for Mercedes there? Is it something to do with their new engine specification? Was it some sort of electronics gremlin? Did it have something to do with cooling? Who knows? I'm sure that we will get more information as the week unfolds here and we do the post-mortem on this race. On board with Bottas when he had his failure, it just seemed like he had a gear select issue or a clutch engagement issue. That would indicate a hydraulic problem. The radio transmission to Bottas said that they had lost hydraulic pressure, so perhaps there is something to be found there. Not entirely sure what happened to Lewis Hamilton. Don't know if it's the same problem that befell Valtteri Bottas or if they were unrelated. If they were unrelated failures, Mercedes has definitely a lot of work to do, because if you've got a problem on your car which will take it out of the race, but you've got two problems that'll take it out of the race, you have a lot of work to do in your R&D and testing department. Sky Sports showing some replays of the highlights. Again, that failure for Daniel Ricciardo looked like a clutch problem to me. And now on board with Lewis Hamilton in replay with his retirement. Not sure what that problem was. Yes, good points there. This is a very demanding circuit on engines and drivetrains in general. Lots of acceleration here. You don't see so much time on full throttle here in terms of running out flat out in 8th gear, but you do see a lot of acceleration around this circuit. It's very much a stop-start affair, particularly in Sector 1. Sky Sports crew talking with Christian Horner, who is definitely very happy despite losing one car here today. Well-deserved win here on home soil for Red Bull. Christian Horner alluding to some sort of cooling issue that perhaps contributed to Daniel Ricciardo's retirement. Again, we saw Ricciardo got on the radio and said that he lost sync in the gearbox. Again, I can only assume that means rev matching on the downshifts. So maybe some control electronics got a little bit too hot and that caused a mechanical failure. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll hear more this week. Yes, the car of Valtteri Bottas being dragged in the background. Oh, Mercedes, you have a lot of work to do. I would love to be in the debrief. What are they going to be talking about here today? What was the failure? And more importantly, I would love to be at Brackley or Stuttgart when these cars get torn down. What happened? And whatever the problems are for Mercedes, they only have a week to get them fixed because next week we're going to Silverstone. Kevin Magnussen talking to the Sky crew. He's also a happy bunny, finishing in P5. Romain Grosjean getting his first points of the year, if you could believe it, finishing in P4. Haas finally back where they should be. Yes, Jonathan, this is round 2 of 3 rounds in this year's triple header. France, Austria, and Great Britain in sequential weekends. We're not getting any word right now in terms of what happened with Mercedes. I'm sure they'll be tight-lipped about it. The only thing that Mercedes can hope for is that it's a common problem on both cars, because if it's just one thing you need to fix, that's manageable, and you might even be able to patch it up in time for the next Grand Prix. If they were dissimilar or completely unrelated failures, you have a lot of work to do, and again, I'm sure we will hear more as the week wears on. Yes, Norman Robinson. He's going to be working on a video of his sim racing setup. So, yes, go subscribe to Norman Robinson right now if you have not done so already. You're going to see some cool stuff in the world of sim racing. Anyway, I will now open it up to some questions and answers now. What are you wondering about? What do you want to hear about? What do you want to know about? Ask away. And that is actually another good point. Mercedes, we could be seeing some power unit penalties forthcoming. Again, they were not expecting a double retirement here today, and I'm sure there are components that need to be replaced. Now hearing from Lewis Hamilton, what happened? No insight from Lewis Hamilton regarding what happened to the car. He's still complaining about what happened under the virtual safety car, not pitting him. Honestly, if you've got both cars dropping out with mechanical problems, it doesn't matter when you make that pit stop, you didn't finish the race. Anyway, Jonathan Straitman, you said that you heard the Formula NA review is coming. Well, I don't know where you heard that, but you'll find out if you're correct a little bit later on this week. Will Kimi end up at McLaren next season? No. No, he will not. Kimi Räikkönen will not go to McLaren next year, I can assure you of that. If Juan would want to win one race in Formula 1, would Juan want to have won in round 1, Juan? Yes. And of course, just to remind everybody, next weekend, July 5th through 8th, the British Grand Prix. It's sure to be another classic race here. Silverstone, also another good circuit for racing. Lots of high-speed corners. We're going to see these guys going flat out around Copse Corner, for example, or going down into Stowe Corner there at the end of the Hanger Straight. It's going to be absolutely sensational to watch these cars running at Silverstone. Norman Robinson, will Lewis change next year? In terms of him changing teams, not a chance. Will he change anything about how he approaches Formula 1? Who knows? The guy is a four-time world champion. He clearly knows what he's doing. Does he need, I mean, people always talk about Lewis Hamilton's attitude both on and off the track. Does he need an attitude adjustment? Quite honestly, I don't think so. It seems to work for him. Jonathan Straitman asking, you've noticed that YouTube shows a lot more ads now. Do I get more ad revenue? Well, the answer to that is no. I don't know why YouTube is playing more ads, but I'm not seeing any repercussions of that, I can assure you. In the interest of full disclosure, because Ferrariman601 is an equal opportunity employer, the channel pulled in about $650 last year. And yes, I did have to report that on my tax returns. Jonathan Straitman with question number 3. You make it look easy to drive the Formula NA 1999. How do you do it? Well, what I generally do is I hit the gas and brake in clutch in alternating succession, and I turn the steering wheel left and right, and occasionally I'll change gear. That's how I do it. Sky Sports, they're just going through replays of Lewis Hamilton's public radio transmissions. Mercedes basically telling Lewis during the race that they lost the race for him. I really don't think they did. Honestly, the strategy call behind the virtual safety car was very questionable, but Hamilton going on to the super soft tires later on, he definitely would have had the pace, but again, you had a car failure, so we won't really know. But I think, honestly, Hamilton, after that virtual safety car period, dealing with the situation he had on the older tires, definitely it was at a disadvantage. But then he went on the super softs. Had everything been fine on the car, he would have been right up there again. Speaking of when can we expect the Williams FW26? I assume you're talking about the review. Well, that's probably going to be the next project. The Formula North America reviews, I'm going to stagger them. I'm going to do it individually, car by car. So the first one to come out will be the 1999 car, followed then by the 2012, and then when we get it, the 2018 car. But in the meantime, we're also going to be working on the FW26 review. MSF released that last week, for those of you who maybe still don't know. Detour asking, what do I think of the FW26 sounds? They're good enough. I think that I think MSF did the best job that they could, given the lack of high-quality samples from video of the era. The external sounds are definitely good enough. The onboard cockpit sounds, you can hear where one sample ends and another begins, particularly at high revs. It's not that marked, but you can hear it. You do notice it. Again, it depends on what sort of materials are available for MSF to work with, because the best that they probably have are a couple onboard videos in 480p with super compressed audio. So given the limitations of basically first-hand material to go off of, I think they've done a fair job. Of course, they could always improve. Anything could always be improved, but I just think it's important to remember that these modders do what they do. They spend hundreds of hours working on things simply because they want to, and then most of the time they give it to us for free. So I think one can only be so critical. The car drives well enough. It's definitely quick, as we saw in the couple comparison videos that I've already put up. It's definitely quick. In the last couple of minutes here, any other questions that we've got? Norman Robinson, this channel is an excellent sporting source. Thanks, man. Well, you're very welcome, and I'd like to thank you for having the fortitude to put up with me. With Assetto Corsa Competizione entering the market, how will we get our VR Formula 1 fix in sim racing? Well, Assetto Corsa is going to remain current for the next few years at very least. It is a great base, it has excellent physics, excellent sounds, excellent graphics. It has everything you want in a sim racing title, so I think Assetto Corsa is going to have a large following for the years to come. I would say maybe 5 or so years into the future, people will still be running Assetto Corsa. And Kunos have not said that they're going to stop supporting it, nor have they said that they're going to stop updating it. Obviously, most of their resources now set over toward AC Competizione because that's their new title and it's coming out soon. But I think Assetto Corsa will remain current. Competizione is going to be very cool because it's going to show us what Kunos have learned in the 4 years since releasing Assetto Corsa, and I'm sure that should there be an Assetto Corsa 2 someday, Competizione is going to be a good indicator of what Kunos are actually able to do right now. Maurizio Arrivabene, he definitely seems happy with the result. Could have been a little bit more, perhaps, for Ferrari, but finishing second and third, getting a big points haul, that's exactly what they needed in the Constructors' Championship. Haas also having a great weekend. They are finally where they deserve to be. Norman Robinson asking me about direct drive wheels from Fanatec. I don't have any Fanatec hardware, so I can't really talk about what it's like to use, but everything I hear says direct drive wheels are the next step up. Jonathan Straitman, what do you think about the new 2021 aero specs? Well, it remains to be seen exactly what's going to happen in 2021. 2019 was not supposed to be an aero change, but we're going to get one next year, and we can talk about it until we're blue in the face in terms of why we're getting it, how reactionary the FIA was to basically no problem whatsoever. 2019, the cars are going to be a lot slower. We're going to have wider front wings, but they're not going to have the outwash effect that we see right now from the end plates. We're going to have wider and somewhat lower rear wings with more DRS. It remains to be seen. The cars are going to have less downforce for sure. That's a given. They could be up to 3 seconds a lap slower next year, and making these cars slower is never the way to go. And I don't think that changing the wings is going to make it easier for these guys to follow nose to tail. But look at the race we had today. This track is basically a stop-start affair. There really aren't any high-speed corners here, except for the last 2 corners of the lap. And we got good racing here with the current regulations. Wings are not going to change the complexion of a Formula One race. The things that will are going to be reliability problems. We had a lot of attrition in this race. We had cars blowing up flat out in this race. What we need are more open engine rules in Formula One, because clearly, as you can see, when people have mechanical failures, it completely changes the order. Mercedes should have absolutely run away with this race, but they didn't. Neither Mercedes finished due to reliability problems. If you had more open engine regs, if you didn't have these ridiculous reliability regulations where you've got to have an engine last for at least 3 race weekends, we would see more attrition in the races, and it would add more storylines and more opportunities for perhaps dark horses to have a good day. That's what's going to fix Formula One. It's not going to have anything to do with aerodynamics. Norman Robinson asking, is there an AC or RF2 mod available of today's track? The Red Bull Ring is official Kunos content in Assetto Corsa, but I think what you're asking about is the third DRS zone. That is not in the Kunos track because it wasn't there when Kunos put that track into Assetto Corsa. I don't know if there's a way to add that DRS zone. It would definitely help me in terms of lap time. Yesterday I did a couple of runs here trying to get as close as I could to the pole lap of Valtteri Bottas. I could do a low 105 and no more in Formula Hybrid 2018. It does seem that that car is just slower than this year's Mercedes, but still, that third DRS zone would add a little bit more speed, particularly that rundown between turns 1 and 3. Jonathan Straitman asking, would it be a good idea to use DRS in reverse? Let the cars catch up to each other and then don't allow DRS when they're within 1 second. That could be interesting. What I would do is just allow the drivers to use DRS whenever they want. It's an advantage that everybody has. Everybody has that DRS fixed on their rear wing, so everybody could use it. It would come down to driver bravery, basically. Would you want to open up the flap when you're in the middle of a corner? It's possible. And we saw essentially open DRS rules in 2011 when DRS was introduced. The drivers could use DRS at any point on the circuit in practice and qualifying, and the DRS zones only came into play during the race itself. I'd like to see a return to that, but no DRS zones. Just allow these guys to use it whenever they want. With all of that being said, though, it is time for me to sign off. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today to watch the Austrian Grand Prix with us. Absolutely brilliant race. I think this is probably the best race of the season in terms of the action that we have seen, combined with all of the on-track action as well as the attrition that we saw in this race. Again, the number one storyline coming out of Austria, both Mercedes in retirement mode due to mechanical failures of some sort. Again, we'll be watching the press to see what happened exactly to Hamilton and Bottas this weekend, but a very popular win for Max Verstappen on home soil for the Red Bull team. Again, Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel rounding out your podium finishers. For the record, Kimi Räikkönen now holds the lap record at this circuit, 106.957 set on the last lap. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you all very much for joining me today. Ferrariman601 signing off from the Austrian Grand Prix. We will see you next weekend from Silverstone. Take care, everybody.